public hearing meeting together, so I'd like to call order February 21. You guys hearing? So, I'd like to call to order the BPW public hearing, February 21. Opening with the schedule of rate and fees with Paul.
All right. So just wanted to start by saying that this is in no way any type of rate increase or anything like that, but more of just establishing a couple of new charges like we've talked about that are associated with our new AMI opt-out program. So essentially any customer that chooses not to have an AMI meter installed would be part of this program and would sign an opt-out form. And a part of that would include us going out to their establishment and replacing their existing meter with a basic meter that would need to be manually read every month by one of our meter readers. And so the charge for doing that would be $105 for an electric meter and $50 for a water meter. And then on top of that, we would charge a $50 recurring reading fee to manually read that meter. And so we've got that all outlined on your schedule of rates and fees that is before you and redlined. And so those are the details, and I'll open it up now for any public comments. I don't think...
I am not public, but may I make one statement?
Please.
This is entirely covering state law. This is state law that says we have to allow this. We are simply doing cost recovery. Done.
All right. Hey, John. Good afternoon. We actually just opened up the public comments for the schedule of rate and fees. Didn't know if you wanted to become a part of that. Have any comments on the proposed rate and fee schedule? Okay.
I don't know. I have a comment on why I don't know.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay. I guess everything's right. So
Okay.
I recommend we adjourn.
All righty. And we'll go to approval for that later in the meeting.
Okay.
So thank you.
You motion to adjourn, I need a second.
Do we need a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, moving right along to the Board of Public Works board meeting, February 21. I'd like to call it to order. Start with an invocation. Lord, I'd like to offer thanks. You've provided us with our good fortune. I ask you to provide guidance for us to make sound progress in our lives and our lives of our citizens. I ask that we remain safe from conflict in our lives and our work. Our thoughts and prayers are with the innocent people in the tragic earthquake and the Russian-Ukraine conflict, and beg for a peaceful end to those tragedies. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
First order of business, do I hear any motions for the consent agenda?
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. Comments from the audience?
Yeah, that's me.
Yes, sir. Hi. You push the button on that red flashy thing, I guess.
I can remember push the red button.
Yeah,
Yep.
It turns green.
Yep.
there you go.
Good. Okay, now it's flashing green. I came here at 4 o'clock for a hearing, and I did get to hear the adjournment. So there were no comments from the public?
No.
Well, this may have something to do with that. I get a letter from you guys every month. And contained in that letter is an envelope I never use. I've never, ever used that envelope. And so my question is, if we're going to have a change in rates, would it be too much to ask that you send your rate change to me, one of the 17,000 owners of this utility? You all don't have to answer all at the same time. But if you're going to have a public hearing about a change in rates, and it's at 4:00, but maybe I got here at 4:02. The presentation we had regarding that rate change was over. So I still don't know what your rate change is. Now, I imagine that you, in formulating your rate, which is the premier, number one responsibility of the Board of Public Works in our charter. The one absolutely clear duty the Board of Public Works has is to set the rates. I assume in your rates you still are taxing all of us who live in Hannibal with a tax that on my bill shows up as customer charge. Now, I've brought this up before, and when I brought it up before, I've had somebody say, well, John, that's part of our rate. Indeed, it is not. If you pay a rate, for example, I pay 10 cents, give or take, for a kilowatt hour's worth of electricity. I pay 2 cents, give or take, for a gallon of water. Now, that's a gallon of water both coming into my house and going out of my house. 2 cents. I can't quarrel with that too awful much. I wish it were. I wish we were back in the days where it was 25 cents for 1,000 gallons. But nonetheless, that's not too bad. But on top of that, I've got to pay $600 a year in taxes that get me nothing. If you have a rate at, let's say, 25 cents an apple, you can buy 3 apples for 75 cents. But if whoever's selling you apples has a customer charge, they'll say, well, our customer charge is $2. So you might as well buy 8 apples, because we're going to take that amount of money out of your pocket, whether you get the 8 apples or not. And as a matter of fact, if you buy 1 apple, you've paid enough to buy 9 apples. And that's what you have here with your meter tax. And the meter tax brings in annually somewhere between $4.5 to $5 million. Can anybody on the board tell me why, if you really put your mind to it, you couldn't come closer to $5 million or $4.5 million or $4 million to have a rate that would pay all of your expenses and leave a little money left over for emergencies? If you can't, if you have to go to R.W. Beck or some other consultant for 50 grand or 60 grand or whatever it might be for them to do it for you, let me tell you, if we all got together, I could do it for you cheaper, a lot cheaper, because it's just a function of mathematics. How much electricity did we sell last year, the year before that, the year before that? How much water did we sell last year, the year before that, the year before that? And then factor that out and figure out what your costs are. And that's not, you make a budget. It's not that tough for you to figure out what your costs are. And then come up with a rate. And if it were me, I'd have a rate that applied to everybody. There's no reason why my first kilowatt hour of electricity ought to cost me more than Long John Silver's or the Hannibal Public Schools or General Mills or Watlow right across the street here. There's no reason why my kilowatt hour should cost me more than it costs all your other customers. Now, if you've got large customers that use up a good deal of electricity and you want to give them a bulk discount, no problem. All you have to do is say, we'll calculate a rate to where the more electricity, the more water you buy, the less that will cost you as you get up above 2,000 gallons, 5,000 gallons, 2,000 kilowatt hours, 10,000 kilowatt hours. You'll get a break. And that way you'd save the money that you spend on the experts that cover you, and you would give those of us who own this utility a break. So I'm sorry I missed your public hearing by 2 minutes, but I think I've brought you the information that I would have if I hadn't gotten here early. Thank you for the opportunity to have a say.
Thank you, John.
Guess you're not going to stick around for the answer?
You've met John before.
That the customer charges in a tax.
Well, the rate we just discussed is, I think what he said was a descending block rate, a descending block rate. And there's nothing volumetric about what we're doing there.
I understand.
Okay, just wanted it on record.
And I don't get an envelope every month. Mine was my credit card.
Yeah, I wish he would have stuck around for an answer. I mean,
Yeah, because that'd have been easy to answer because he's wrong on everything.
yeah. I don't know, maybe I should have asked if he wanted to stay for an answer. My bad. Moving along to the next agenda item is the regular reports, starting with Darren.
All right, I have a very short report. But my report is this. This coming Thursday, in 2 days, we're going to have the first Stormwater Citizens Workshop. It's going to be at 7 o'clock. It's going to be here in this room. We have, one of the things that I have done is we are looking to get as much education out into the public, communicate as much as we can, and also answer questions. We have tried to come up with a funding source for a stormwater utility, which we have been given the direction to create. We have gone to the voters once before. We went to them with a pervious, impervious criteria. That was how we were going to create a tax to fund that. It failed. We've come back, we talked about doing it using a gross acreage per owner charge. That met with some consternation, and I agree that it was not done well enough. There were going to be people in our community who were going to be harmed by that. And so we pulled that back. So I apologize for that. However, with that, we have also gotten a lot of attention from the community. And we need to move forward using the community to help us create this tax, this way of doing business for the creation of our stormwater utility. I would ask you as a board, how many of you are going to attend? If there's going to be 3 or more, if you're planning, we're going to post it. That's not an issue. We just want to make sure that we're doing everything legally and according to all of your sunshine laws and things to that effect. We're going to be talking about what's the history that we've kind of gone through. We're going to talk about the people that are involved. We've talked to our legal counsel, and because this is going to be a fairly, they're already busy and pretty well maxed out. We have an outside counsel that's going to be helping us. We have an outside engineering firm, Black & Veatch, who's already helped us. And then we're going to open it up kind of to questions after we give some goals and principles that we're looking for a committee to help us with the creation of this stormwater tax. So with that, we don't have any preconceived notions. The other thing that I have done is I have talked to our councilmen and asked each of them to give us a couple of names of the citizens that would represent the residential. I'm looking at a committee of approximately 15 people. We're looking at having at least one representative from industry, perhaps a couple from commercial, perhaps a couple from the realtor and realty developers section of citizens, and then at least 10 or so citizens at large. And we believe that with that we'll be able to create a good enough information that they will be able to come up with the correct answer of a tax that will be passed by the citizenry. And so that's our goal. We're going to have this meeting, and then in approximately a month later, I'm going to ask you as a board to help me select those 15 people. We'll make invitations, etc. I've asked the councilmen to give me names of people from their wards. I've contacted every name that they have given me. Some of them, I think I have 3 of them that I just had to leave messages, but I've been reaching out to them personally. Most of them are planning on being here, and I would simply add with this meeting, invite more people. If there's anybody out in the community that have interest in this, please come and be a part of it. We'd like to hear their voice. The conclusion of that meeting, we're going to open it up to questions and comments. We're not going to have the answers for them immediately, but we're going to capture those. We will create the answers. We'll get them from the right people, whether that's engineers, whether that's from our council, and then we will move forward. We'll have another meeting in March, then April, a concluding one, I believe, in May. And that'll be a heavy lift, but I think we can do it. And then we'll have a product that we can bring back to you, then take to the city and mayor and city council to put on a ballot when it's appropriate. So that's what we're doing with stormwater. I feel very good about the direction we're going. Any comments or questions that you have of me?
I think the first part that you mentioned procedurally, we should probably post it, because if somebody at the last minute wants to phone in so they can be a part of it or watch from the internet, the live, then everything will be covered. There's no votes that need to be happening. And if it is a posted meeting and we don't have a quorum, that's fine. If we do have a quorum, that's fine. So we just don't get into any legal beagles who are looking to quash the thing before it happens due to procedure.
Perfect. Thank you. We will do that. Thank you.
Proceed.
Is there a replacement for Corey yet?
No, not yet.
Does he have a rep? That you? Okay, thank you. What was your name again?
I'm Maria.
Okay.
Yeah, so Darren can tell you more about the search process, but there are still 2 of us in the office, myself and then our administrative assistant, Melissa. So between us and the board, we're handling Corey's responsibilities with the hope that that'll be filled within the next few months. But if you guys ever have any questions, feel free to let me know, or Darren and Matt have been incredibly helpful for what we've been going through. So they're very well informed.
Okay. Well, very nice to meet you.
Yeah.
And unfortunately for Maria and Melissa down there, they've gone from, their staff has gone from 3 to 2, and they're wearing that. So if you look at the math on that, they're actually doing 50% more of what they've usually been doing, but they're doing it gracefully, but we need to get their help, get that replacement as quick as we can. That's all I have for my report.
Another few comments about the Black and Beach thing that you'd mentioned about, we kind of pulled back the original plan. I don't think that we collectively had enough time to look at what Black and Beach had put together to reason it out and say, what about all these other situations? We didn't have a chance to look at the wording and really didn't see the structure until the very last minute when it came together. So I don't want you, Darren, to apologize for that not happening properly. I just think that the timing was so short between their final product and needing to have wording on a ballot that it was kind of their delay, or maybe us not giving it to them quick enough. So for that, I'm not really super impressed with Black and Beach, but it's also our responsibility to have taken what they put and gone through it, putting different scenarios together, and I didn't do that, and we didn't do that, and it ended up turning into something that was really unfair. And again, I'm super happy that some people piped up and said what they were going to, how they're going to be affected by, I own 10 acres, so now I pay 40 times more than a person that owns a quarter acre. It just really wasn't very well thought out. But anyway, I'd like to add the fact that I'm responsible too for not having thought it out very well.
Thank you.
Any other comments about the general manager report? If not, then we can move along to Alex with operations.
Yep. I'll be giving Matt's report. I kind of went through with Matt some of the highlights he wanted me to go over, so I'm not going to read verbatim. Hitting the highlights here: transmission and distribution, availability, there was no change. Outages stayed the same, but the minutes decreased from 410 to 358, and I think that's a function of our tree trimming, staying on top of that. The installation for the generator has begun at the plant, so we're hoping to commission that late February, early March here, probably within the next month. Other than that, electricians and linemen, pretty much standard duty type stuff. And you guys stop me, I'm going too fast. But the water system, total water system per month, we're right there. We're actually down just a little bit, and we are still working on the leak detection stuff, and hopefully making some headway there, you know, to be as accountable as we can. At the water treatment plant, proceeding with heater installation in our GAC building with those tube heaters. Our roof project is well underway. As far as the design for that, it's sitting with Miko Engineering right now. And the big one I got started here, it's kind of a thankless award possibly, but on January 19th, we did receive a water fluoridation quality award from the US CDC. We're one of, I believe, 30 communities in Missouri that use fluoride in our water. We're basically recognized for that. So that's proud of our water plant, proud of what we're doing. On the distribution side of things, we had 14 excavations during this month. 3 of them were main leaks, and that was down somewhat from what it has been. So we're, of course, it seems like more often than not, chasing those down and trying to make sure things are buttoned up as tight as we can. Wastewater treatment plant activities, the highlights there, we got quotes for replacement blower on our O2 system. Basically just end of their life type thing. They don't have near the life that you would expect them to, and I think those are 10 plus years old at this point, and just at the end of their expected life. Lance reviewed his year-end biosolids report prior to submittal to DNR and US EPA, so got that housekeeping measure taken care of. On the wastewater collection side, near and dear to my heart, 0 SSOs again this month, and that's something I know Darren has probably talked about in the past, but we're happy with that. We've got a full crew that stays busy, working on hot lists, working on the known problem areas, root cutting and that sort of thing, just to be as proactive as we can in order to not have to be reactive. And I'm really happy with that. We did get one CIPP point repair done, and again, that has continued to be a very big asset for the Board of Public Works, being able to go in there and to trenchlessly fix these pipes and not have to dig up near as much as we used to have to. I'm back onto the stormwater side of things. Our last to-do item out there at Bear Creek was to burn the brush piles that we cleaned up several weeks ago. So we got that taken care of, and that should have been the last to-do for Corps of Engineers and MDNR until we get to our ARPA project to widen that mouth out. On the technology side of things, the highlights there, we got 9 of the 10 new desktops deployed in January. And I know Matthew's working very hard to try to get back on a rotation schedule to change that technology out. You know, we kind of got bit by the supply chain stuff there during COVID, but trying to get back on these regular replacement schedules. Meter side of things, we're down to 168 electric and 175 water. So it's going down. It seems like it's taking a long time, but we're sure getting there. And And I can tell you it is making a difference on the monthly water loss report that I run. Every single month that we get that number whittled down and more of those new meters in there, it seems like it's I don't know if you'd say more accurate, but there's fewer and fewer discrepancies each month that we have to go in there and manually try to hunt down and correct. So that's a good thing. On the safety side of things, just generally on January 25th, we did have a safety meeting with representatives of Liberty Utilities next door. Topic being safety around natural gas systems, and that was more for us as water, sewer, and electric people to kind of know what's going on when we're exposed to gas leaks, or if we're on site during a gas leak, or vice versa. Just to keep everybody on the same page, and again keep safety at the forefront for everyone. Inventory side of things, January 23rd. Jubin Moss started, and he's been doing a good job back there, staying busy. Mapping side, Joe collected 111 points, which probably pretty average. He's a big asset. I know previous consulting engineer life, he worked with a lot of different utilities that didn't have that in-house GIS, and that's a big asset that the Board of Public Works has to keep on top of that stuff and keep maps up to date. Business office statistics, I'm not going to read through all those. You guys have them in front of you. I think the one thing is the very last one on page 6, just the 2,534 calls on the month, and just a little under 2 minutes for each one. And good job to the front office people and keeping our customers taken care of and resolving those issues. That's kind of the highlights. Blew through it as quick as I could, but do you guys have any questions or anything you want me to pass on to Matt or try to answer for you while I'm here?
Any questions?
How are they coming on the substation down the road?
That'd be a Jared question,
Jared,
but
I guess it would be a Jared question, wouldn't it?
they're buttoned up pretty darn
Right,
close.
yeah, right now, Capital's pretty well, got their portion, which is the construction portion, and what I would call the hardware testing, the switches, breakers, all the preliminary testing. Monday, the 20th, TRC, our commissioning firm, came in to start getting familiar with the project, and they're doing point-to-point every wire where it lands, and then go through all the relay settings. The original schedule is 4 to 5 weeks. I don't know if it's gonna take that long or not, but, there will be, a few things that need to be looked at, and growing pains and stuff that has to get moved around and taped and moved on prints, and they'll find some things that need to be corrected, so, I'm curious and excited for it to be completed to move on to the next myself.
Yep. Well, thank you. Another reason I thought of it was I came up from downtown and drove right by it on the way here.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's, I would say in that 95 percentile.
All the equipment is installed.
It's all the
Being
hardware's there,
commissioned.
everything's there, all the parts and pieces are there.
Cool.
Yep.
Thank you.
I had one quick question. I'm not sure if it comes under this category or later in the agenda. I noticed a comment about the lining of the flood buyout sewers downtown.
Downtown SSO?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, it's later.
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Thank
How
you.
about right now?
No, you're okay.
Well, any other questions about operations? Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
And thank you, Alex, for projects.
Projects, you've covered most of them already. One is the roof. We've got Miko, just as Alex said. We've had some leaking over at the water treatment plant. We've got a couple roofs that have to meet together, and that there's kind of a hodgepodge there. Miko's doing the engineering, then we'll go out to bid for that, but that should be happening soon and get that corrected. Gravity filters there. We continue to move forward with that project. That was put off because we were going after ARPA money. We were hoping that we could get some assistance there. That project's going to be around $1 million, and so we felt it was a good thing. If we could have gotten anything out of that, it would have been a big plus for us. But again, we're moving forward with that. It's going to take a little bit to get to the bidding process on that one. Downtown SSO elimination, that's your Trek design. And they met, I believe, about 3 weeks ago and had a couple more things they need to look at and that we'll be addressing. But it's moved along very well, and that is coming to a conclusion as well. Patchen, they've continued to watch it. They're considering the use of pressure grouting in some of the areas of Patchen. Right over here, they're low. When it floods, there's issues, but of late, we have not had those issues, and it's been performing very well. Again, Trek hydraulic modeling, they've met together. The engineers continuing to modify the model, and they're working with BPW staff to get there. Stormwater projects, the utility development, that's fully on me. We're moving forward with it Thursday night, 7 o'clock here. Be here, be square, something like that. When it comes to the other stormwater projects, 2 others. One is North Street Sewer. This is the one where the city has received approximately $5 million, not approximately, they've received $5 million in ARPA money. They've also looking at getting $3.5 million from Mr. Graves from Congress. And with that, they're going to be moving forward and going from where we ended with the Army Corps of Engineers project with that storm drain up and around the corner to where the old bridge access is. This is one of the things I'd share with you is that that's going to cost right around that $8.5 million, and that's around $2,000 a foot by the time we're done. So when we have people talking about how come you guys want so much money for your stormwater, that's an example of what we're talking about when we go touching the ground and have to work around sewer, water, fiber, natural gas, all of the other things that are in the ground, and then you've got to put a storm drain in the right place, the right size, it becomes very expensive. So just a kind of a heads up there. In the middle of that paragraph, the city staff has asked that we manage the project. And so we are participating in webinars and reviewing information concerning the use of the ARPA funding. One of the things we've got to make sure is that if you miss up a rule that comes along with that ARPA, then you may lose it. And we don't want to get in the middle of that, mess it up, and not get full use of that $5 million. We're also being very careful how that marries with the money coming from Mr. Graves. So with that, you've got to have both of those work in the right way. We've got to make sure that they work together correctly, and that we're going to be doing that and taking care of managing that project correctly. Bear Creek Dam spillway, that's moving forward. We're getting some engineering. We need to do some surveying, and also, again, following the rules of that. We're not looking to turn dirt until 2024. That's a ways off. That we've got plenty of other paperwork and permitting, et cetera, to get done prior to dirt being turned. Down to the electric projects, Jared has done a great job. We're doing the commissioning. And frankly, it's one of those things that you have to have some special people in there where they chase every single line. They check the settings on each one of those, and they get into the ohms and the VARs and all kinds of good stuff that you got to be an electric guy to understand all of it. And that's why, it's expensive. However, when it's all done, that substation is going to serve us very well for 40, 50 years. And so it's the safety on it, the reliability that it brings, absolutely worth it. They're remarkable folks for what they do. And with that, that's about all I have, unless you have questions on projects.
Anybody have questions? No, thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
I guess on to Paul for financial report.
Okay, quick financial update for January of 2023. Starting with the balance sheet, you'll see a pretty substantial decrease in our unrestricted cash for January, and we'll talk about it in a minute, but we had some purchase power that was a little bit more expensive than usual for the month, and we also continued making our construction payments on that 161 project, and so we're continuing to whittle that down. And so there's some timing differences there based on when we make those payments and then reimburse ourselves with our lease proceeds. Also had a large increase in current assets, which was primarily customer receivables, again, likely due to timing of when people pay and when that's recognized. Utility-wide, total assets were down about 1% from a month ago and about 8.9% from a year ago.
Paul, I'm gonna be rude. I'm gonna stay here and listen. I need Matthew to look at something on this.
Sure,
Keep
sure.
going, please.
Yeah, I'll just keep on trucking. Current month of January compared to our budget, utility-wide, our net income was about $563,000 less than what we had budgeted. This was all primarily due to the electric fund. Purchase power costs ended the month about $680,000 more than what was budgeted. A couple reasons for that perfect storm. That cold snap that we had in late December, those invoices were recognized in early January. So that was part of the reason. We also had 5 purchase power invoices for January as opposed to the normal 4. Obviously, with the way the weeks work out, you're going to have a few of those months every year that happens. And so that all led to the inflated purchase power costs for the month. It was a good month, though, for the water and sewer funds, which was a trend that we've grown accustomed to this year, which has been good. And I'll just point out again that this was the first month of revenues for the water fund following the rate increase in January. Current month actual compared to last year. So compared to a year ago, in the electric fund, net purchase power costs were about $1.1 million more this year than last. And so on a utility-wide basis, our net income was about $1 million less for all 3 funds. Kilowatt hour sales, though, were up about 1.1% from the same month a year ago, so pretty consistent there. So year to date now, we're 7 months in. We now have a utility-wide net loss of about $391,000. So revenues utility-wide are up about 2%, but our purchase power costs are really eating into that as they're now $1.5 million over budget. Water and sewer funds, though, are both ahead of budget slightly due to higher than budgeted revenues in those funds. Year to date, compared to last year, we were about $2.8 million behind last year's numbers, again with a net loss this year. Revenues are up about 3% utility-wide, but purchase power costs are now 48% more than they were a year ago. So we've talked about it several times. We knew this was coming in the electric fund. Obviously, our capacity that cost us about $80,000 the year before is going to cost us $3.4 million this year. And so we knew that this was coming in a certain way. Obviously, we've talked about it as well, that we're working to mitigate our exposure when it comes to capacity for next year, looking at several different avenues and how we can do that. And we do have several items in play right now that we've been discussing. So continuing to look at that. And with the water and sewer funds, those are both continuing to perform at or ahead of budget. So that's been a good sign there. You've got the rest of the financial items in there for the month. Let's jump now down to our debt service coverage ratio on page 21.
Before you do that,
Yeah,
can
absolutely.
I ask a couple of questions?
Yes, sir.
So in your opinion, how are we looking financially? Because we had the substantial increase in cost in electricity primarily. But how do you feel? Are you comfortable with the directions and plans that we have right now from just strictly financial standpoint?
Yeah. So like I said, with the electric fund, we knew with that capacity increase that was going to directly come out of reserves. And so really year to date, if you factor in that added cost, we're actually a little bit ahead. Now, we never did go back and modify the budget to include that $3.4 million in there. And so, it was kind of in the back of our mind, it was there, but we never actually reflected that in the budget. And so really, I think if we had modified it and reflected it, we would actually be a little bit ahead at this point in the year. And I think that's again due to Prairie State. Prairie State has come out ahead of what we had budgeted in terms of revenue and those credits that we get back than what we had budgeted. And so that overage and capacity is almost being offset just as much or maybe even more by those credits with Prairie State. It really just happened to rear its ugly head this month because we did have the the snap there in December that cost us quite a bit. So yes, in my opinion, with revenues being a little bit over budget, that's been a positive sign financially, because that's always an unknown. You never know where that's going to kind of shake out at. And so we're definitely looking at long term how this will affect us if this capacity issue continues on for the next several years. That's something that we'll really look at hard this budgeting season for next fiscal year to kind of project that out.
Okay.
But I do appreciate the question.
Is minimum and maximum established by law that is, or where do those figures come from?
As far as the
For reserves?
no, not by law. That was a recommendation. The way that we calculate our minimum was a recommendation that UFS had made back whenever that cash reserve policy was established, which I want to say was in 2018, I believe. Matt's not here to.
And that's based on a percentage?
It's based on several things. Percentage of operating expenses for the next fiscal year, percentage of historical investment in fixed assets, percentage of Prairie State capacity costs, and I'm missing one, but there's 4 or 5 things that factor into that.
The bonding regulations.
Yeah, that's it. Yep.
And being fairly new, I haven't gone through this yet. What happens when we exceed the maximum or drop below the minimum reserve?
So the maximum, like I said, the minimum was set by UFS. The maximum was set by the board at that time, based on their direction. UFS never recommended a maximum.
Okay.
And so that's something we've kind of talked about a little bit. I don't know that we've ever been below our, I guess in my tenure, we've never been below our minimum when it comes to any of the fund's reserves.
Okay, that's good.
And really, when we had that rate study done here recently, kind of redone this past year, they really pushed back on having a maximum, just because you saw things like Winter Storm Uri, in which your reserves could be swallowed up in an instant. And we took a significant hit, luckily, or fortunately, not as bad as some other communities. But there's things, you throw out a tornado that could come through, you're talking one line down, and it's cost us, we're coming $8 or $9 million on this new 161 line. And so that's going to, eat into your reserves immediately. And so when it comes
I don't have the page up here showing that maximum, but what happens, say if it's, I'm just pulling a figure out of the air, 5 million, and we hit 7 million for the month, what do we do then when we're above the maximum? Do we just note it as, we're above it now? Or do we have plans to, let's get it back down to the 5, because we're talking about the public's money.
Right.
We don't want it just sitting out there. I've heard some complaints already about, hey, what are we doing? Board of Public Works is sitting all this money in reserve, and it's just sitting there.
Right. So we have a 5-year capital plan in which, a lot of that is going to go towards that. We did take out $11 million in debt on this current project and ongoing project. We have other projects, though, that are going to come out of the reserve. This $3.4 million is essentially coming out of the reserve. And so there's other things, and we could get into more of the specifics if we ever needed to on any of that. But certainly a question that I think the board would be I guess proper to ask. What are we planning on doing with that?
I didn't know if we have, with this nice to have list we have over here that we want, we just haven't had funds that we've got $2 million, let's hack off some of that, or purchase some of the items on that list.
I think a lot of it, so a couple of things. Number one, that volatility that we've just had this last year, having that healthy reserve has absolutely kept us in the game.
Sure.
And with that, I anticipate you're going to see that reserve drop by the end of this fiscal year. We're going to be in the red if we were to look at this year alone. we let you know that. We told you at the beginning of the year that this is a new cost in here. There's a new game in town with this capacity market, and we're going to have to be involved in that. That reserve helps us coming out, and instead of just a knee-jerk reaction, say, all right, we've got to have an increase of this so that we can stay in the black, we're able to keep people's rates exactly where they are. The other thing I would remind everybody is that your electric rates were set here, and I don't think we've had a rate increase since what, 2008 or 9? I mean, or 13, something to that
Yeah,
effect.
14 or 15, we had a,
It's about 10 years since we've had any rate increase for any of our industrial, residential, commercial, anybody. And so some of this reserve has come from our own efficiencies, and Jared and his crew's doing a great job, and we've moved from being reactive to being proactive. So those are things happening. The other thing is in the market itself, there is volatility coming. One of the biggest, if you look at it on a grand scale, we keep pushing coal and base load generation out the door, and we're replacing it with renewables. And that's what we're seeing, that capacity market. Last year, we had to buy our capacity at $237.73 or 36, whatever, $237. This year, that is called CONE, cost of new entry, which establishes that number, has gone from $236 to $300. And if we have to buy anything at that, it's going to cost us a lot. Now, we're managing it. We're doing everything we can to find all the capacity. But that volatility is going to cost us, if it goes one way, if we're not able to get all the capacity that we can get, we're going to be paying that, and we're going to have to be able to have that, and we're planning on using that reserve fund.
Okay.
And so while folks, absolutely, this is the people's money, and we're very aware of it. The reason we go through all of our finances every single month, and we show you down to the penny what we're purchasing, is that we feel the fiduciary responsibility that you as board members have and that we have. We hold every one of those pennies sacred. But that money, when it comes to an electric, I will tell you, I don't believe we have a max fund there that's really accurate. We need to have that healthy reserve so we can react to market and the changes that are going on in the market today, because our electric grid in this nation is getting turned on its head.
Yes. Believe me, it's not personally that I'm asking that, but I just want to be prepared when I get questions.
Absolutely.
I have been, yes. So.
And I thank you for letting me rant and tell you exactly why.
Robert, I think the reaction is, we all lived through the Texas ice storm, I call it, a few years ago, when those rate increases went to $600,000 a month. I mean, if we had not reserves to cover that, immediate rate increases for our constituents would be the issue. The other is tornadoes in this neighborhood. When those come through, you got to have some cash reserves to cover it. Now, if we could predict that would never happen, then we could mitigate that. So I think that's part of the reserves concept that our constituents, our consumers don't understand when they see a big number that we have in reserves. That's what it's for, or part of what
And I
we
can
have
understand that. I was just wondering what happens when we go over that? What is the plan? What do we do? How do we approach that?
And I think Darren's addressed that within the budget starting this year and the following. Is that correct?
Yes. I also think, so on the other end, if it got too low, so this year we're going to take some out of reserve. What happens if next year we just say, let's take another little chunk out of reserve because we know the capacity is, again, going to be high? Well, within 2 years, that starts to drop down, and we say, all right, as a board, we need to do something. It might be a rate change. It might be, there's things we can look at doing. But that's where, and so that reserve gives us a little bit of time as well to keep from doing knee-jerk reactions, going out, having to do a rate increase. This helps us to take a look at markets and see how they're evolving and make the right choices to keep our industries as competitive and solid as we can.
And I will add that the more I'm seeing, the more I'm understanding. I definitely saying kudos to the board, current board members, not counting by myself, but former ones, what they've done, and especially kudos to Darren
And
and the
previous
staff here.
Yep, not me. Thank
So-
you. Thank you.
Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's all right. I think that was pretty much all I had for the financial report. Is there any other questions? All right, thank you very much.
All right, thanks, Paul. Moving right along to unfinished business. It looks like Darren's gonna talk about a change order for the 161 connection.
We are looking at, you have a document in front of you that is the completion of, I believe, all change orders. This has to do with the Finn connection project. This is the wires. This has everything to do with running the wires. It is not the substation. There may be others at the substation that we may see, and so we're not closing the door on that one completely. In front of you, there are 7 change orders that came in completely in total. This, the background and information provided, please know that this is, it's due to constructability, product availability, weather conditions. What happens is your contractor goes out there and says, I can do this for this, so long as the conditions are X. When those conditions change, they have to do something different. If that wasn't in the contract, then we need to pay that difference. We have an engineer, BHMG, who watches this construction. They have observed it, they know what's going on, they've helped manage it, and they're sort of that arbiter in the middle that says, no, this is not a change order that is your responsibility, or they say, yes, this is a change order that's your responsibility. So let me go through them very, very quickly. Change order number 1, the installation of matting. This is one that we've already approved. We came to you several months ago, and it was in the September of 2022. You already approved that change order. We've written the check. That went to the contractor. The next 6 of them are what we're bringing to you today. Number 2, it's $37,000, and this is for the receiving of materials, scheduling the materials, and please note that this was back when we were having struggles with materials showing up. We were having struggles with the warehousing of it, et cetera. And with that, they sent crews down. They were not met like we were supposed to. It all happened, and this is one, again, BHMG says that $37,314 is what it would be fair to reimburse them for. We have gone through several times the iterations. It was actually higher than that, and we have gotten it as fair as possible to that number. Change order number 3 was the addition of culverts. When we got out there, if you went out and saw where that line was constructed, it's very hilly, a lot of contour, and while we had looked at it and we had what we believed was the right way to enter in and get to each of the structures, there was a couple of them that still needed some culverts to be installed. So that's the addition of the $15,000. Change order number 4, on the materials, there was a step nut. And so Jared can correct it, that this is going to be, I'm going to tell it in layman's terms here. At the very top where you're hanging the wires, there's stuff coming off of it, and some of it has little nuts and things in the wrong place. They were put in the wrong place, not according to engineers, and so they needed to go up and remove some of them. And this was something that the producer of the poles, they went and did it, and they're going to pay for it. So that $22,000 there, while it's a change order for us, we're going to accept it. It's going to be a pass-through right back to the pole reimbursement. And so it's in essence, it's a 0, but we need to approve that. Jared, is that close enough to true?
So step nuts, we made these poles, there's 36 structures, we made them all climbable. So there's little bolts that's welded so that you can climb. Well, there was a handful of structures that the way the height and the wire and where the mounting, the way that it was mounted, and that was, there was a step nut in the way. So every one of the structures, they had to get rid of one step nut, at least some structures, they had to get rid of multiple step nuts, so they could perform the work. One thing I will add as well is that with, especially with the culverts and the matting, we included in our bid unit pricing. So we, as in the Board of Public Works and BHMG, we recognize the fact that there was gonna be some of this material and some of these things that were gonna have to be installed. But we did not recognize how or where or how many was gonna be needed. So we included unit pricing so that each bidder had the ability to price per unit, per mat, per culvert, and then there, I think there's another thing here that was a unit price as well.
Okay,
Sorry.
thank you.
Yes.
Change order number 5, $0 for anchors. That's an easy one. We accepted that. We thought that was a good number. Change order number 6, this was the installation of a pole that was down low and it had a lot of water in the base. In order to get that set appropriately, they had to come in and pump the concrete in to push the water out. It was a different methodology than what they had. And again, BHMG said, yes, it's appropriate that we pay for that. The last one, number 7, these jumpers are to connect us from our line to Ameren line. This was a change order of $4,000 because we asked our IPC guys to go ahead and do those jumpers. Either they did it or we were going to pay Ameren to do it. They were there on site. So this is actually a change order that we were going to pay Ameren. Instead, we're going to pay IPC, and it's good. So this really is a cost to us one way or the other. We just depend on who we're going to write the check to. So I'm going to request that you approve these change orders. Now, it's very, very valuable to see that the total amount of the change orders requested is $115,000. $22,584 will be reimbursed, and the $4,000, the last one, the jumpers, will be reallocated. So the actual cost to us is $88,654.56, or 7.3% of the original project cost. In almost every single contract that you do, you put in usually a contingency. There's a 10% contingency, sometimes a 15% contingency, depends on how rough the ground is, etc. This comes at 7.3%, which I tell you is very customary, normal, and I would ask you to approve these change orders and that it was truly a good job, and this shows that it's been well managed by Jared and by BHMG.
Motion to approve the change orders?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank
Where
you.
are we at now?
Rates and fees.
Rates and fees. Paul.
Okay, so in light of Mr. Ling's comments, I will reiterate that we are not increasing any rates tonight or anything of the matter, but simply just adding a couple new charges associated with our AMI opt-out program. So you've got that new red line document there that will represent our new schedule of rates and fees going forward. If approved, these new charges would take effect March 9th of this year. Matthew and Emily did a really good job of putting a document together that outlines all of this. It will be posted to our website, as well as educational material for why we're doing the switch to AMI in the first place and everything like that. So kudos to them for that. That will all be available on the website. So tonight we're just requesting that the board go ahead and adopt that new schedule of rates and fees as presented before you.
Move we adopt the new schedule of rates and fees as presented.
Any discussion?
Second that.
Second. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carries. All right. Looks like next item is new business, key financial ratios.
Okay, thank you. So every year we go through these key financial ratios after our audit is concluded. So our most recent audit was fiscal year ending June 30th of 2022. And so we take those numbers and we go ahead and evaluate some of these metrics just to kind of see how we're doing. So I'll go through them briefly here. In the electric fund, you'll recall that we did pay off a $3.5 million lease on the diesel generators and then added $11 million in April of 2022 for the ongoing projects. So we did have our debt to assets ratio and our debt service coverage ratio that were negatively impacted by those changes. However, The electric fund for fiscal year 2022 was still very healthy. We did have a significant gain that we recognized from the sale of those generators, and so that was reflected in the increase in net profit margin. And if you have any questions about the ratios that we're looking at, or kind of why we do this, please stop me. But again, this is our policy that we go through these ratios every year. The water fund had a pretty poor year financially, which we kind of expected. This was our first full year of having our operating expenses associated with the GIC filtration process. And so we finally had a full year of operating that system. We also did not do any of the rate increases that UFS had suggested in their rate study in 2018. We chose to forego those rate increases as we were still kind of coming out of COVID. Plus, we didn't really know how much it was going to cost operationally, like I mentioned. And so we did not do any of those rate increases until fiscal year 2023. So the ratio that we're kind of keeping the closest eye on in the water fund is our debt service coverage ratio. It did end last year at a 1.5 and is required to be a 1.25 per our debt covenants. So that's why we've kind of been looking at that on a monthly basis. And again, the increase in operating expenses led to decreases in both the operating ratio and the net profit margin in the water fund. Pretty much all other ratios in that fund were consistent with the year before. The sewer fund saw positive changes in every single ratio in fiscal year 2022. It is continuing to operate in a very strong financial position ever since that refunding was done on our bond issuance in that fund. Again, that bond issuance dates back to 2013. We then refunded that bond, or refinanced essentially, in 2020. And so for the life of that bond, we'll be paying much less in interest expense. That has continued to do very good for that fund. Additionally, the sewer fund also had higher operating revenues than the year before. So summary, or just to summarize here, for the utility as a whole, there are only two ratios that are below their targets, and that would be debt to assets and debt service coverage ratio. Primarily, again, that's due to the electric fund with the addition of the $11 million in debt in that fund. Also, our debt service would have been inflated with paying off the $3.5 million note in the electric fund as well. All other ratios utility-wide saw positive changes compared to the previous year. So if we just looked at a pure operating standpoint, revenues utility-wide were up about 2%, and expenses were down about 4.5%. So you can put the math together there, and then that kind of tells you how we did for the year. And again, I'll just point out that all of these calculations do exclude the stormwater fund, as it currently lacks a revenue source, and so any ratios in that fund would not be meaningful. But we've got all of our calculations there, and so I'll take any questions you have on that at this time.
Paul, on the ratios for the water, do you think that after the recently increased prices for water, after they play out for a year, that'll make a big change to the ratios?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so we've kind of seen that trend. Like I said, we've only got a year under our belt fully operationally, but yes, having those increases plus a better understanding of where our expenses are will at least stabilize, if not maybe change that trend to a positive direction going forward. And we're already seeing that. I mean, I guess stabilize would be the right word, because that debt service coverage ratio has really stayed right at 1.5 pretty much all year.
Okay, so it sounds like we got the bond deal done just in time before rates across the world started going up.
Yeah, no doubt.
All right. Any questions about the financial ratios? Thought you were kind of at the end of that. And thank you very much.
All right, thank you.
And Matthew, the surplus computer equipment?
Good evening. Before you, there's a document just listing 23 computers that we have retired from service. They've reached their end of useful life and fully depreciated. 4 of those we have given to the police department. 3 of those, since that memo was made, also went to the fire department for whatever they're going to use it for. So we just ask that you declare those as surplus, and we'll go through our disposal process as normal.
I think this is fairly customary, and in your opinion, if they're needing to be replaced, definitely go with what you say. So we have a motion to turn these into surplus items.
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
In a second,
I'll second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, moving along to the Ameren Wholesale Connection Agreement. Mr. Gordon.
Thank you very much. You used the word customary, and I believe that's about the same word that I would do here. This is really a housekeeping item that Ameren approached us. We've done a wholesale connection agreement with them over here at the Oakwood Sub. With that rebuilding, all those things going on, they went back and they said, all right, we've looked at our west side connection, and we would like to do the same thing, simply cleaning up the language, making sure that we have everything. The other thing that this wholesale connection agreement does is it gives a very clear delineation what's ours and what's theirs, even down to the breakers, the conductors, et cetera. So that's what this is, and this is the wholesale connection for the west side sub, the west side connection. Our attorneys have looked at it, and so has Ethan. Everything is in order, and it's my recommendation that we approve this. And if there's any questions or comments on that, we'll take them.
No major changes of any kind,
None.
just business as usual.
Yes.
It's just getting it in writing.
Yes. I'm sorry. There was one thing, and that they want to make sure that if we have additional generation go inside of our system, that we clear it with them first. So in there, you will see that there is mentioned that we're going to be we're anticipating the construction of a 7 megawatt solar farm at the airport. This is identified in here, recognized, and I believe it's absolutely the right thing. So that is one change that is different.
And I would add, it's customary now because of the world we live in. The west side, original didn't have that in it because that was kind of not,
Not
the
known.
norm. And now with solar and distributed generation and all the things that are going on in the world now, it's a customary change.
The verbiage that was put in there about the possible solar, was there at least perfunctory verbiage about the possible cogeneration at the General Mill?
No, that hadn't come up yet.
Okay.
That had not been.
Do you think that there's going to be restrictions in this agreement to not allow that?
I do not. I think we'll still have to work with them. I think that what we're looking at doing there will stay behind the meter. Most of these say that we really get to, the only times they get excited is if we start to push power onto their grid, back to them. Everything is still going to be flowing this way, even if that occurs.
Well, I didn't read the whole thing, but I'll believe you. Believe it. So it's just basically putting a boilerplate on something that didn't have a boilerplate before.
Correct.
All right. Is that something we need to approve?
Yes, please.
We have a motion to approve this.
Yeah, I'll make a motion.
In a second?
Second?
Any discussion? If not, all in favor, then say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right. Great. Moving on, do we have comments from city attorney?
I don't have anything unless anybody has questions for me.
Think of any.
Why?
All right. Anything else anybody wants to talk about? All right.
Closed session pursuant to section 610.021212 of the Missouri Sunshine Law, the meeting shall convene in closed session to discuss real estate and contracts. Please admit board members Darren, Paul, as well as Darren, Paul, Courtney, and Ethan.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We're officially in closed session. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you.
Good night.